This is Rob Tebbett for Boxing News. Delighted to be joined by the one and only Russ Anber. We're here, actually, to be fair, Russ, I know we were in Valencia about an hour before I got here, but I'm not actually sure where we are. Where are we?
This is Gandia on the Mediterranean Sea. Fantastic place. Yeah, it's been really wonderful here.
And of course, the home of a certain Oleksandr Usyk for the last few months, and indeed
the whole team's at home. Yeah.
And indeed the next few months as well. Of course,
Yeah.
after the untimely postponement of Fury versus Usyk. Just get your immediate reaction to that and your immediate response to that.
You know, I mean, it just all of a sudden you realize that we were in the gym sparring, and we were in probably round 6. And phones started going off, and everybody. So I'm at the side of the ring, and I'm watching Usyk spar, and I'm watching the sparring partners and giving the sparring partners the instructions and whatnot. And one of the guys comes over and he says, "You think this is true?" I look, and it was from Coppinger. You know, it was released by Coppinger. And I said, "Man, I mean, unless that's a fake post, you know, unless somebody just took a picture and put his name on it." I said, "You know, Coppinger's quite reliable in what he puts out. He just doesn't say anything." I said, "You know, it could be that it's, you know, that it is true. He would know. He works for ESPN." And then, you know, the phone. Then it just cascaded like a domino effect of craziness and unbelievingness and what? Are you kidding? You know, and so close. And this is the second time actually in my career that I can remember for big fight where literally 2 weeks before a fight, a fighter has pulled out as a result of injury in a big fight, only to have the rematch, oh, not the rematch, but the postponed fight, maybe even bigger than the originally scheduled one. So let's hope this is a case as well.
What was the other one?
The other one was Pascal versus Bute, which aside from Leonard Duran in Montreal, you know, was the biggest grossing, most attended, most talked about, anticipated fight probably in Montreal boxing history. And 11 days, I believe, before fight week. So maybe a little bit more than a day, more than 2 weeks, a couple of days more than 2 weeks exactly. Bute pulled out for an injury on his wrist and had to have surgery and whatnot. And in hindsight, actually, as a result of that, it probably benefited Jean even more. So hopefully this will be the case and it benefits Usyk even more.
You mentioned earlier there when the news kind of came round in the gym and the reaction of kind of unbelieving and not really knowing what was going on. From speaking to Usyk today, it seemed like he may or may not have been the calmest guy in the gym. It didn't seem certainly the impression that I got from him today, and many others have had the same, that he didn't seem like it really fazed him, which I think probably shows just what an extraordinary character he is.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that I guess the English-speaking world or the big marketplaces, USA, UK, you know, the two biggest English-speaking marketplaces in boxing, don't know this guy at a deeper level. He truly is an extraordinary human being and stands for a lot of good things in life that, you know, normal citizens and people like. And he's a model, and we don't get to see enough of that maybe. And but he, you know, I think everyone was relatively calm, but Usyk should have been the one. You know, you would think another fighter is going to lose it. But it's just his demeanor. This wasn't done on purpose, Rob. He didn't, you know, have to focus on, okay, I'm going to be calm. It's just the way he is, you know. His thing going back to I'm feel, is the way he is as a man. You know, this is him as a man, and there was nothing fake about it. He's a believer. He's a God-fearing man, believes in himself. He understands things happen for a reason, and that's boxing. What are you going to do?
He said something earlier in an interview. Unfortunately, it wasn't my interview that he said it, but he said that Tyson Fury is crazy, but me, more crazy.
Yeah, maybe. You know, his sanity probably makes him crazy, you know, like where other people would be losing it, maybe he is more crazy, yeah.
Now, obviously, Russ, among many of your many talents and skills, Cutman is pretty high up on that list.
It is now.
It is now. Thoughts on the cut? Obviously, a lot of kind of conspiracy theories, as inevitably there is in a crazy sport like boxing. We do love a tall tale every once in a while. Just your reaction to the cut, obviously the photo of the cut, and we'll come on to kind of, I guess, the recovery from something like
Look,
that.
I don't know, Rob. I mean, it's obviously the cut's there, It's extremely rare, and I think even Tyson would admit to that as well. You get hit, especially wearing a full face headgear with the bar. That's like almost impossible, but it happens, and they're saying it was an elbow. You never know. Anything could happen in boxing. I can't say that I've seen it happen before, but cuts happen, and they just happen, and who knows why. What can you do? You at first, the first reaction is, no, it can't be fake, it's not real. But it is, and what are you going to do? It happens.
From your trained eye, and I appreciate you haven't had him under the microscope, a lot of the talk around this is the time. It's 3 months. Is that long enough for a fight of this magnitude, for a cut like that to heal?
I think so. I would think so. It's probably good. Nowadays, I mean, it closes up really good. The stitches are going to be out in a week. It'll heal. They'll put vitamin E on it. They'll heal it. I think 3 months is. I think it'll be sufficient for sure.
How does it change a fighter's preparation, particularly when you consider that the fight is 3 months away? How will that change, particularly the early part of his camp?
If you go by what Tyson has said, and now this is only by what we hear him say, that 4 or 5 weeks, that's enough training, no problem. So he'll spar the last month leading up to the fight, and the other 2 months maybe just be in the gym and not sparring, so it really won't be affecting the eye. I don't see it as being an issue. I mean, Foreman and Ali, were postponed a month. I think it was only a month. I don't know how bad the cut was with Foreman, but it was postponed a month and was never a factor in the fight. There are fights where guys have been cut in the fight where the cut wasn't a factor in the fight. So who knows? And then there's the Wallen fight where he was bleeding all over the place for every round. You don't know, but I think if he took it on 3 months, he must know and have gotten the right advice that he's ready to go.
Does it favour Oleksandr Usyk? Does it favour anybody in this instance, or is it kind of really not ideal for both guys?
I don't know that it's ideal for anybody. I mean, this has thrown everybody's life into turmoil now, and not to mention my air miles of now having to go to here, to Australia, to Riyadh, all within the space of a week, and maybe not even leave Riyadh, because if the rumors are true that Bivol and Beterbiev is coming up 2 weeks after that, I'm not going to leave home and then fly back for fight week 3 days later. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But Rob, I don't know. It's I think it puts everyone in turmoil. It's hard to say who. Maybe if anybody, if Fury was looking, and it seems that throughout all of this, if you go back to when, he beat Joshua, when Usyk beat Joshua the second time, the fight should have been made. That was, okay, you're supposed to fight each other. And when was that? 2022?
Yeah, August.
And we're still here, and the fight still hasn't happened. So is he prolonging it because he wants more time? Maybe. Does it favor him because if that's what he wanted was more time? It seems like he's wanted more time. Otherwise, the fight should have happened a while ago. That's the only thing I think that's bothering me, is that you can you're the heavyweight champion of the world. You can make this happen. You could have made this fight happen. There was nothing stopping you from making this fight, and yet it took this long. I think that's the only thing that's pissing me off.
I spoke to Usyk earlier about the difference in preparing for a Tyson Fury as opposed to an Anthony Joshua, or even further back, preparing for a cruiserweight opponent. He basically said, it's just like any other camp, any other opponent. Have you sensed that in him? Obviously, I'm not asking to pry into the deep, dark depths of the camp.
Ask what you want, bro. Don't worry.
But is this a different preparation for somebody like Fury, who is so big, so unorthodox, and
Well, your strategy's gonna be different, right? Every opponent's gonna have a different strategy. If you're fighting a right-hander, a southpaw, a guy who switches, your strategy's gonna be a little bit different. Your sparring partners, if you're fighting a tall guy or a short guy or a strong guy or a guy who moves, that's gonna be different. but generally his preparation in terms of number of rounds that he's going to do, what days he's going to spar, what days does he run, what days does he do, how many times a day does he train, all that stays the same. He has his routine that he's had since the beginning of his career, the number of times he trains, how he trains. Only the strategy and technical preparation suited to each opponent will change. Everything else remains the same. And I'm glad that this camp was, I'm glad I was here for this one, because we ironed out a few things that, I never got to spend enough time with him over the last little while to look at a few things and try to get into his head, like, try this. And he did, and it worked great. So this is the same thing, going back to what I was thinking about the Jean Pascal preparation. When Jean went into the camp the first time for the Bute fight, he was coming in like out of shape, if you will. And he's trying to train his way back into shape, and sparring partners were banging him around the ring. I was like, what's going on here? When the fight got postponed and we went back to camp, he was just coming out of an 8-week camp, just a month ago. He was already in good shape. So we started the second camp in a way better position than we were the first time. So I think this is also the case technically, and when dealing with the height and size of Fury, that I think it's an advantage for us.
Just want to go back on something that you said earlier on in the interview about the type of character Oleksandr Usyk is, and the fact that, I think he probably speaks a little bit better English than maybe he puts on sometimes.
Well, no, he speaks better because he's improving. Like, he has
course.
someone teaching, he's taking English courses, he practices. And if you were to sit down and talk with him and talk slowly, and pardon the grammatical mistakes that he might make, you would understand what he says. And sometimes he'll just look for a word that he'll ask somebody what the word, and then he'll get it, and he goes on. And if you read between the lines, if you will, of what he's saying, you understand him. But his English has greatly improved. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. No, it's a good point, well made. But he's not I sort of hate the terminology around it, but he's not a Westerner. He doesn't speak English as a first language.
Of course not.
You are around him more than the vast majority of people. What type of guy is he?
Be a little more specific. Or what guy? He's a great guy. I mean, that's why, like I said earlier, I think it's a shame that the Western world, or at least the UK and US market, don't realize what a stud this guy is. Like, this guy should be on a box of Wheaties. This is that kind of a guy. This is to me, when a little bit. I don't want to make this comparison because they're very different people, but the same way that AJ has time to say hello to everybody, and AJ, it's not just a show. AJ is genuinely a nice guy. You know what I mean? I think you can say the exact same thing about Usyk. He is a true people's champion. We walked out here earlier, and the guy who's been here and taking care of us all the time, please, Russ, can I get a picture with him? And he walked right over. I said, Chico, he wants to take a picture with you. Okay, come on. And like, it was no problem. Like, he did it. He's happy to. He treats everybody equally, the presidents and the reception desk. Doesn't matter. He treats everybody with respect. And I'll tell you this, Rob. This is probably, I think, the best way to sum it up. And I've never said this about any other human. Okay. I have a daughter. Are you married, kids?
Yeah.
Okay. You want your daughter to bring a guy like this home. I think that says it all. There's not a lot of people you can say that about. That's the kind of guy you want your daughter to bring home.
High praise indeed.
Not bad.
Just sticking with the fight, something that I put to Oleksandr. I was going to say disregarding the Fury and Ngannou fight, but you can't. It happened, and we all saw what happened. Do you believe this is his most difficult fight, Oleksandr? Is Tyson Fury his most difficult fight?
How can a guy 6'9", 265 pounds, not be difficult? And he's agile. That's the one thing that has always impressed me about Fury, is that technically this guy should be a big lump. You know what I mean? Big, strong, imposing his size, and boxing science handles those kind of guys. Skill set, size doesn't matter when skill set comes into play. But he's good. He's agile. He's not a big lump. He's good. He has he has that look of somebody who learned to box before he became a heavyweight, and still carries those moves. So how can it not be difficult? You're fighting a big guy who's undefeated, who's the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, it can't be a walk in the park. If it is, great. That just proves how great a fighter Usyk is. But we're certainly not looking at that, and we expect it to be a very tough fight because I think Tyson Fury is a tough fight for anybody at any time. Would he have won? Would he have beaten a Lennox Lewis? Would he have beaten a certain guy? Maybe not. But do you think it would have been easy? No, I don't think it would have been easy. I think he gives everybody a tough fight.
A lot of talk going into this fight is inevitably about the size, as we've just mentioned there. Do you think that Oleksandr Usyk's punching power in his own size? 'Cause he's not a small guy.
He's not a small guy.
He wasn't a small cruiserweight who just kind of put on a few extra pounds.
No.
Do you think his own size and his own punching power? We saw him hurt Anthony Joshua. We saw him hurt Derek Chisora.
He's hurt everybody he's fought. Go ahead. Continue.
That was basically it, Russ.
So, what do you mean that he has punching power?
Do you think rather that his punching power and his ability to hurt Tyson Fury is being overlooked?
Well, I don't think Tyson's overlooking it. I don't think so. You can't. You can't know boxing and overlook that. You know, look at the guys he's fought. Look at the damage he's done. You know, like you said, he's not a small guy. He's a big dude. He's the size of he's the size of an old Ali. Not even a young Ali, an older Ali. So, you know, he's a big guy, man, and he can thump.
You've been around the block more than once, should we say,
Nice
Russ?
way of saying you're a bastard. That's it. Yeah.
Your words, not mine. Where does he?
No, I think they were yours. I think they were yours.
Where does he fit among the great fighters that you've worked with in your career? I'm not asking for an order.
Well,
but
in my career, obviously he's top of the list, you know, or among the top of the list. Sadly, I didn't get to work with Roy when Roy was in his prime. You know, I worked with him after that. But for my career, for sure. But you talk in history, forget my career. I mean, in history, he's going to go down as one of the greats, and there will always be the ultimate dream matchup, you know, of him against Evander Holyfield. You know, that's going to be the argument for ages because it's going to take a hell of a cruiserweight to come along and do and surpass what Holyfield and Usyk have done in their career. It's going to take a hell of a fighter to do that.
Now, I spoke to Usyk earlier, and I wasn't able to ask him a question about a certain Artur Beterbiev, of course, somebody that you know very well.
Sure.
And, of course, he knows very well as well from their amateur rivalry.
Yeah.
Beterbiev, as I'm sure he would have said to you, and he said it to me a couple of times, still quite likes the idea of potentially boxing Oleksandr Usyk at some point. Is that kind of fanciful from him, or is it something that you could ever see happening?
Jeez, I hope not. And I don't want to be involved. It's bad enough I had to deal with that with Callum and Beterbiev. I don't want to have to deal with that again. But you know what? When you talk about lists of crazies and who thinks who's crazy, well, you can add Beterbiev to that list as well because he's another one who fears nobody. Let's go. You know, he wouldn't turn down a fight if you offered him Tyson Fury. He's okay. You paying me? Let's go. He'd fight. He's no fear in that man.
You just mentioned there, Callum Smith against Artur Beterbiev about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think the fight was now. Understand the predicament that you were in. Of course, worked with both guys for a long time. But a magnificent performance from Artur Beterbiev. And really, you know, if there were any sort of discerning voices about where he was in his career and his age, I think he answered them in pretty emphatic fashion.
I think what I don't like is anybody who thought they could make a prediction saying that Beterbiev was going to win that easily. You were either a Smith hater or you overloved Beterbiev. But from a boxing perspective, even their own camp, even the Beterbiev camp, didn't think that there's going to be they were looking at this as possibly being the best opponent they had faced in the toughest fight they were about to face. And the fact that he came out of it the way he did, I think, just proved that, you know, when this guy's on his game, he's a really tough guy. And you know, he had the tough fight with Yard. Yard was a tough fight for him, you know, and hung in there and took more punches than I've ever seen anybody take and come back and continue to fight, you know, against Beterbiev. There's not a lot of guys who have done that, if any. And so what did Beterbiev do? Figured, well, you know what? I only train 12 hours a day. Let's raise that to 14 hours a day, you know, and get better for this one. So, like, he's crazy, the guy. And, you know, he proved just how gifted he is. He's special. There's no doubt about it. He's that kind of special, natural, debilitating talent that comes along only once a generation that you see that, you know, like a Mayweather, a Roy Jones, a Beterbiev, you know, that kind of crazy, freakish power, that ability to do things and win fights in convincing fashion doesn't happen all the time. And, he's done it. It's not bad.
And of course, is now in his own undisputed title fight against Dmitry Bivol, in a fight that I think we've all clamoured for a long, long time, and we finally got it. What a brilliant fight for boxing.
Imagine how big that fight could have been in Russia if the war hadn't happened, those two guys fighting for the undisputed title. Russia would have been crazy. We'd have had a good time in Moscow, boy, I tell you. It would have been crazy. Because I was there when Usyk fought Gassiev, and I know how big that was. And they do things big. Boy, imagine that, how big that would have been. Again, the fact that it's taken so long. This is, when you look back, and I know, it's all those old days. But when you look back and think that a guy like Leonard fought Benitez, Duran twice, and Hearns in a span of a little over 18 months, maybe a little under 2 years, fought those three guys in that space of time. Great fight. And we've waited so long to make Bivol, who's been sat around doing nothing, how has that fight not been made? How has it taken this long to get Fury and Oleksandr signed to fight? I just don't understand, because when there's a will and you want to get things done, boom, it happens instantaneously. He wanted his fight for December 23rd or whatever it was, Fury, and fought Chisora, boom, made it happen right away. When you want things done, you can make it happen, And that's the only thing that's bothering me now in boxing, of how long it takes to make fights. And it seems like Mayweather set this trend, with how long it took to make the Pacquiao fight. And then it just seems like fighters are trying to copy that. They're just waiting. Tank Davis won't fight anybody. None of the lightweights want to fight anybody. They all talk. The fights aren't made that the public wants to see. Hopefully this changes a little bit with the Saudi money that's coming in, but it seems now everyone just wants to take advantage of that. Oh, there's a cash cow. Let's steal their money. Let's take their money. Ask for ridiculous amounts. And that's what it all comes down to. So I don't know. I hope we can see more of that, and I hope we can see more fights like this and have champions fighting. Even Canelo now seems to be following that trend, and now you fought a junior middleweight. You defended your title against a junior middleweight who leapfrogged 2 categories, leaped over 10 super middleweights who have made their whole career at super middleweight, and you get a shot at a title. And now the middleweight is leapfrogging over every super middleweight that's there, and this is allowed to happen. I don't get it. I don't understand. I know it's all about money, and that's what you could say. It's all about money. But how do you want us to defend that? How is that even a defendable position that, Benavidez isn't getting a shot, Morel isn't getting a shot, and Billy isn't getting a shot. Nobody in the super middleweight division who have plied their trade in that division is getting a shot, Rob. And guys are leapfrogging from other divisions and going over and getting a shot at the cash cow of boxing in Canelo. And the governing bodies are letting it happen. How? What's the rationale and logic behind that? I don't understand it. You answer that.
I think if I could answer it, Russ, then I'd be probably living in a 5-star mansion somewhere, 5 bedrooms. But yeah, I mean, it is that, and I think what you said earlier on in that we'll call it a rant actually, Russ, was that fights like Fury-Usyk has been it could have happened 18 months ago, a couple of years ago perhaps, but it is happening a bit belated.
That's what we always say.
Belatedly,
yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, I thought last year, as much as I didn't think it even before the fight would have been the most competitive of matchups. Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia kind of did their thing, which was nice to see. It was refreshing. But my hope is that rather than that being the exception to the rule, it becomes more
the rule.
The rule,
yeah.
Absolutely. But back to Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. The most difficult opponent for you for Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol?
Again, up until up before that, Callum probably was. But now it's going to be Bivol. He's the champion. He's the Canelo conqueror, if you will. So it has to be. He's a talented guy. He's a gifted guy. He's a guy that is a great example to young fighters about just do the basics really well, like really understand the science of boxing with the basic 5 punches of boxing, and you could go on to a great, great career when you do that extremely well. And he's proof of that.
And the final fight I'd like to talk to you about, always like to talk about Lomachenko whenever I get the opportunity to, and certainly with you. Challenges again for the IBF lightweight title. Must be great to see him back in the mix at lightweight for those belts, particularly on the back of that controversial loss to Devin Haney last year. Still hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it hurts because his only dream was to become the undisputed champion. And he took a stand of not taking the Kambosos fight back in Australia when the war started, which would have made him undisputed then, and then ends up fighting, I guess what you would say, the tougher of the two opponents in Devin Haney for the undisputed title, gets shafted in that badly, and now has to go and pick up a piece of the title and try to get back his claim of wanting to be undisputed champion. That's what hurts me about it. Just seems that he's been a guy that's been wrong done by, underappreciated. And sometimes in life, in all walks of life, when someone is too good, there's a lot of haters out there for people who are too good and too gifted at their game, and they get a lot of hate as a result. And it's sad that this guy wasn't more revered, because the talent that he is absolutely extraordinary, and we won't see it again in our lifetime, someone that good and that gifted and did what he did and gave up weight to everybody, moved up just so he can have a challenge, giving up weight, because technically he doesn't even belong at a lightweight. He's a junior lightweight, and moved up, and yet when he suffers a loss against a guy who was 154 pounds going into the ring, what's the point of having a weigh-in then at that point? No one gives him credit. You could just see it, like the naked eye could see. You don't even have to be on the scale. You see the size difference and the performance that he put on, and we don't appreciate that. Bothers me a lot, and I think it's hurtful to somebody who has worked that hard, conducted himself with class, never in any problems. You don't hear him cussing or swearing or being disrespectful to people, and we don't give him his just due into just how great he is. Because I think if he'd have been a fighter from the UK or America, oh my God, he'd another one who'd have been on a cereal box.
Is it sort of project undisputed still for Loma? Is that? I mean, it's obviously going to be difficult now. You have to go, as you've said there. You have to piece it all together rather than winning it all in that one hit. He's not a spring chicken.
Yeah. And his style requires a little spring chickenness in him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That makes it, he's not a guy who can rely on power that can flatten you and blast you out of there. He has to work. He has to work for every round to dominate you. And he's against big guys. Not only, he's a decent puncher, but he's not a massive puncher at 135 pounds. So he has to work at breaking down these guys who are no longer lightweights anyways. I mean, they're twice the size of a lightweight. And that makes it even harder. And, it's not easy. He has to work very hard to get those. There's a lot of mileage on that. It's not like he scores first-round knockouts and is out of there without any mileage on the body. There's mileage on there, and he has to work hard for those wins against big guys. So it's not easy. I'm sad for him that he didn't get that decision. I'm hurt for him, and it's an injustice that, of course, will never be corrected in boxing. And you'll say, "Oh no, Haney won the fight." And well, there's not a lot of people saying that. There's not a lot of people saying that, and it's sad that it had to happen, and it's sad that it had to happen to a guy like Lomachenko.
I remember when he came back after the Lopez loss, and that was obviously a very disappointing night for him. I did feel that Lopez deserved to win the fight that night. But I remember watching him against Masayoshi Nakatani and thinking there's something a bit different. He's got a bit of an edge to him. And I feel like he came back after that Lopez fight and really wanted to put himself as, an elite amateur, then pro as he is. Have you felt that from him since the Haney fight? Do you feel that that's what we're going to see from him in the Kambosos fight? Do you think we'll get a Lomachenko with a little bit more of a point to prove?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've always felt that he always had that point to prove. I always felt that there were obstacles put in front of him, and he had to perform and had to perform and had to perform. And he took on the challenges that he took on. And I guess you could say, after the Salido fight, he comes back super strong after that fight. So I mean, he does come back after losses in quotation, but. I think he's always going to want to go out there and prove just how good he is. I think that's the way he is. A loss hurts him. It hurt him in the amateurs. He doesn't like losing. He's a competitive guy in everything he does. And he'll go into Kambosos' own country and fight him there. So he's going to want to prove just how good he is and know that he's fighting the crowd as well in Kambosos. And he has to look good and has to look better than than Haney did.
Okay, Ross, always a pleasure catching up with you. Before I let you go, we are, of course, here for Oleksandr Usyk. Be bold enough to ask you for a prediction. May the 18th, Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk. All the marbles at heavyweight. How does it go?
Well, I think Fury might win. No, of course not. Listen, I'm here for my guy, and boxing is boxing, but Usyk is my man. And I think that he will carry the mantle of the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world come May 18th, and it'll be announced the winner and new undisputed champion, Oleksandr Usyk.
There we have it. Russ Anber, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing News. Real pleasure catching up.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Rob. Thank you very much,
I look
mate.
forward to catching up with you soon.
All right, brother.
Cheers.